don't want to say anybody.
You had a question? I had a question before. Somebody raised the question about design, and we do have on page 15.
Let's just stick with the committee question, okay? All right, so we're all in favor that we strike the subcommittee to deal with this. Hands up, all in favor? Carried, good. So now we have, now we have to have a subcommittee. So Guy has volunteered to be on the subcommittee. We need at least 3 people to be on. Michelle? Eric? And Keitha?
Why, thank you, Mr.
Oh, no, well, I can hardly see you, Keitha, behind.
Well, Steve, listen, how about if I scooch? There you go. For the record, I did not actually put up my hand.
Oh, but you didn't say no.
Are you volunteering to be
Sure.
on the committee? Okay, that's fine. So.
And again, a big chunk of this is going to be directors, obviously, so much of this is administrative stuff, so obviously it needs to be.
So then I believe, do you have those names down, Stephen?
Sure.
Ellie's got the names, right?
Okay, yep. So perhaps.
I do have a couple of comments after that might help the committee.
So that if you could arrange some time, perhaps you could steer up the meeting date and time with the subcommittee, and then they can talk about it. And also, and then maybe, I don't know whether it's Eric's responsibility or now the committee's responsibility.
Now the
to
committee's
get-
responsibility.
Pardon?
Now the committee's.
Oh, it's now the committee. As the committee could get to, on paper, who the partners are who are funding this and how much they're funding so that we can know where we have to come up. And then, since it is feasible that we can, with council's permission, we can do some sole, source.
I just need to think that through personally. I mean, if we're a small participant in terms of funding, then the others have flexibility. I just need to think that and get some advice on that process.
Because we need to know that, because otherwise it has to go through regular channels about putting out expression of interest or whatever, as I mentioned in my email. So this is good discussion. Or did you have something to
Yeah,
add?
if I could, and this may help. I think nailing down the budget is critically important because you know this committee has got its budget allocation for 2014, so we need to make sure that we've got an ability to fund that funding gap. So I think nailing that down is very important. So, I mean, and Eric has been the contact for that, so maybe the subcommittee can deal with it, but I think they've been looking to you to kind of deal with that. If I put this in, you know, there's a discussion about what Patrick's proposing, you know, what I think I'm hearing is that it needs to be a review of what I would describe as the scope of work, right? So he's written a scope of work here. If the scope of work is different, we need to tell him that. And I've heard connectivity, you know, something with Point Moline, localize the monuments. And I guess this is my little twist on this, because the issue of what the plan is and, you know, where it's specific. I'd like to think that this plan is reasonably specific on the things that we expect that we were going to implement, so that you will see in this plan, not a final detail, but when we were going to build some access behind the band shell, we put a conceptual drawing in. And when that was funded, then what happens is the city then moves to kind of the final design, the tender and drawings. Right? Same thing when we did the crossings of Water Street, right? So that was in here. Well, I think I hear Eric saying and others saying is what we struggle with sometimes is when we get a proposal that comes from a community group or some others that maybe that wasn't our project to implement, but we're now dealing with how do we place that and so on. And I think one of the things I would ask Patrick in the scope of work is, okay, tell us how you can write a plan that gives sufficient guidance and an approach to deal with that. But I can tell you, my experience, and I know Fern will probably back this up, is you will never know where the next proposal is coming from or to or whatever. So you need enough framework to deal with it, but you may need enough flexibility in that plan that you've got to deal with it. So you, somehow, if we're gonna go to the next level of detail, we have to find the right level of specifics without not being able to, you know, deal with something that you can't predict. Right? You know what I mean? So, and that maybe is a challenge to him, say, how can you write a plan that makes us comfortable that we're not absent of a plan, but the plan is not so rigid that if something unpredictable comes in, that we're not be able to kind of say, okay, well, in the context of what the plan says and what we think, this is what we think. Right? And I don't feel like I'm explaining that very well, but you know what I mean? Because I mean, in the times that Fern and I've dealt with this, it's hard to predict where these things go. You know, the Rotary comes in, wants to originally build a gazebo on top of the old powerhouse, right? And Fern and I went through a lot with that, and eventually ended up with the gazebo where it is now, because we had to go through some of those things. So, and that's probably a scope of work that Pat would tell us what experience and what guidance he might have to say, have a plan that's got enough good guidance, but not. The focus is typically on things that come by others, not us, because I think the things that we're proposing, that we were expecting that we would carry and propose, are reasonably in here. I mean, they're conceptually, but when we move then to so if that helps you.
Well, I want to thank you, okay.
Just
Fern?
add on for the committee to comments to follow Steve. I think that over the years, the one thing that I found that we were missing is if you almost, like, I'll use words like passive active, like we have experience in the park and we know where we have crowds and we know where we don't have crowds, and what's been difficult is all of a sudden somebody comes in with a great idea that, you know what, we should build this right here. Well, you know what, it doesn't blend in. So I think going from here to a bit down, like Eric was mentioning, is if there was something where you have, well, this would be the area for that type of, and this would be that, so that you don't end up in the middle of an active part of the park with a passive monument that doesn't fit there. So I like that idea. I think that would be nice to have.
Well, I think our current plan sort of does lay out the
Yeah.
open space areas.
But on
that we don't want.
on an operational, you're still, I agree with Steve, you're still running into some
Yeah.
great debates and convincing people of this may not be a
Right,
good
you can't do
place.
that. Well, Eric, I want to thank you very much for coming this evening and really explaining this document from a different point of view, because I certainly wasn't the only member of the committee who felt that we were talking about an update of the waterfront master plan, and so with your presentation and explanation